It all started in the most unexpected way, at a bustling trade conference in Ohio. With a few careless words, the spark was lit, words that would soon echo far beyond the conference walls. During a panel discussion, a mid-level American official, perhaps trying to lighten the mood, joked that selling Kentucky bourbon to Canadians was like selling caviar to someone who only eats fish sticks. The room chuckled, but the remark carried an edge. What the official didn't realize was that someone in the audience had their smartphone recording, capturing every word and every smirk. Within hours, the clip was everywhere, shared, retweeted, and replayed across every major social media platform. Canadian news outlets and social media feeds exploded with outrage and disbelief as the story quickly gained momentum. For many Canadians, it wasn't just a bad joke. It felt like a slap in the face, a reminder of old stereotypes and dismissive attitudes. The comment stung deeply, reviving old feelings of being patronized by their southern neighbor and reopening wounds from past slights. It wasn't really about whiskey at all. It was about respect, dignity, and the way Canada wanted to be seen on the world stage. Talk radio and TV hosts fanned the flames, dissecting every word. Callers vented their anger, and the story dominated headlines for days. The American official issued a public apology, but for many the words rang hollow and insincere. Canadians across the country felt the apology was too little, too late, a mere formality rather than a genuine gesture. The incident quickly became a symbol of a deeper frustration, years, even decades of feeling overlooked, undervalued, and sometimes mocked by their powerful neighbor. The US government tried to contain the fallout, calling it an unfortunate, unofficial statement, but that did little to calm the storm. The words once spoken and shared couldn't be taken back. The damage was done, and the consequences were spreading. For millions of Canadians, it was the last straw, a moment that crystallized years of pent-up frustration. What began as a joke about whiskey had now set off a full-blown diplomatic firestorm, with both sides scrambling to respond. Suddenly, issues of trade, culture, and national identity were all on the table, fueling passionate debates and heated negotiations. The insult was no longer just about a drink, it was about how Canada saw itself and how it demanded to be seen and respected by the world. The stage was set for a confrontation that no one had expected, but everyone was now watching closely. What started as a careless remark had become a national rallying cry, uniting Canadians in a surge of pride and determination. The world watched as a new, unpredictable chapter in US-Canada relations began to unfold, with consequences that would reach far beyond a single conference room. And in the end, it was a single, careless joke, one moment of thoughtlessness, that changed everything. Canada responded with a unity rarely seen in its modern history. From coast to coast, Canadians of every background came together, setting aside their differences in a remarkable show of national solidarity. Political divisions, which often dominate headlines, seemed to dissolve overnight as citizens and leaders alike rallied together for a common cause. The Prime Minister addressed the nation in a live broadcast, demanding not just an explanation, but a formal apology from the White House for the slight. His tone was measured and resolute, not angry, making it clear that Canada would not be dismissed or belittled on the world stage. In a rare display of unity, opposition leaders and provincial premiers stood shoulder to shoulder, echoing the Prime Minister's call for respect and recognition. The message was unmistakable. This was about more than politics. It was about national honor and dignity. Behind closed doors, Canadian diplomats delivered stern warnings to their American counterparts, making it clear that this was no minor incident to be brushed aside. The so-called whiskey comment quickly became a symbol of a much larger problem, representing years of perceived slights and frustrations. Across the country, Canadians made it clear they were done quietly accepting a junior role in international affairs. The government moved swiftly, channeling the surge of public anger into concrete action, crafting a strategy that reflected the will of the people. This unity sent a powerful signal to Washington and the world. This was not a fleeting outrage, but a turning point in Canada's story. From small towns to big cities, Canada was speaking with one voice, demanding to be heard and respected on the global stage. The era of polite silence and quiet diplomacy was over. Canadians were ready to stand up for themselves. A new chapter was beginning, one where respect would have to be earned, not simply expected. The world's eyes turned to Ottawa, watching as Canada drew a bold line in the sand, refusing to back down. The stakes had never felt higher, and the outcome would shape Canada's place in the world for years to come. The US response to the controversy fell flat. There was no formal apology, just a vague expression of regret that left Canadians feeling dismissed and frustrated. The lack of a sincere gesture only deepened the rift between the two countries. Instead of bridging the gap, a US senator openly mocked Canada, calling the outrage an overreaction and fueling the flames of public anger on both sides of the border. In response, Canada struck back hard, imposing a 100% tariff on American whiskey, a move that sent shockwaves through the industry and made headlines across the country. Almost overnight, the whiskey boycott was born, with Canadians rallying together to support the new tariffs and shun American spirits. American bourbon and rye vanished from Canadian shelves, as liquor stores quickly pulled the bottles and customers sought alternatives. The US retaliated swiftly, slapping tariffs on iconic Canadian exports like maple syrup, lumber, and auto parts, escalating the economic battle. The world's friendliest border suddenly felt tense and uncertain, with customs officers on edge and cross-border traffic slowing to a trickle. Both governments dug in their heels, refusing to back down or show any sign of weakness as negotiations grew more heated. The trade dispute escalated rapidly, dominating news cycles and sending tariffs soaring to unprecedented levels. Diplomats scrambled behind the scenes, working around the clock to find a solution, but neither side wanted to blink first or risk appearing soft. The economic pain was real for small businesses and workers, but the symbolic damage to the long-standing friendship between the two nations was even worse. The whiskey boycott quickly became a national cause in Canada, uniting citizens in a rare show of solidarity and pride. The two allies, once so close, were now locked in a bitter standoff, with political cartoons and headlines capturing the growing tension. What started as a joke or a minor slight had now become a full-blown trade war, with both sides digging trenches and preparing for a long fight. The chill in relations was unmistakable, as even routine diplomatic meetings became frosty and tense. No one knew how or when this standoff would end. The stakes kept rising, and the world watched as two old friends became fierce rivals, with the outcome hanging in the balance. The whiskey boycott became a cultural movement. Canadians embraced their own distilleries, shunning American brands. Bars and liquor stores proudly featured Canadian whiskeys. Distillers saw a surge in demand, finally their moment in the spotlight. The whiskey war inspired songs, comedy, and a wave of patriotism. Buying Canadian became a badge of honor. The conflict wasn't just about trade, it was about identity. The Buy Local movement exploded. Even Tim Hortons joined in with a rye-flavored Patriots brew. The boycott united Canadians in a way few issues ever had. It was about more than whiskey, it was about pride. The story of standing up to a bigger neighbor became a national legend. The whiskey war was now part of Canada's story, and it was just getting started. The real power of the whiskey war came from the people. #SipCanadian swept social media, turning every drink into a statement. Bars and restaurants revamped menus featuring only Canadian spirits. Patriot cocktails became the new trend. Liquor stores saw American whiskey sales plummet, while Canadian brands soared. Consumers explored local distilleries, discovering new favorites. The movement was spontaneous, authentic, and everywhere. Choosing Canadian became a quiet protest, repeated nightly. The shelves became a map of Canada's distilling talent. #SipCanadian showed the impact of collective action. It wasn't about government orders, it was about pride. Canadians realized their choices mattered. The movement redefined consumer patriotism. A simple drink had become a powerful symbol of unity. In the US, the whiskey war hit hard. American distilleries lost a major export market overnight. Small producers faced layoffs and bankruptcy. The pain rippled through farmers, barrel makers, and truckers. The spirits industry lobbied Washington for a solution. Politicians who once mocked Canada now called for diplomacy. Retaliatory tariffs hurt American businesses and consumers too. The conflict felt pointless and costly. The industry the joke was meant to champion was now suffering most. The American hangover was real, economic loss and political frustration. The pressure to end the standoff was mounting. By spring, cracks appeared in Canada's unity. Retaliatory tariffs hurt Canadian industries, lumber, maple syrup, auto parts. Some questioned if the cost of pride was too high. The #SipCanadian movement lost some steam as old favorites were missed. In the US, political pressure from the whiskey industry grew intense. Secret talks began between diplomats. Both sides wanted a way out without losing face. After months of tense negotiation, a breakthrough came. The US issued a formal apology, acknowledging the insult and Canada's whiskey heritage. Canada agreed to phase out the whiskey tariff. The US lifted its retaliatory tariffs. The whiskey war ended quietly, no parades, just relief. The scars remained, but the border reopened. Both nations had learned hard lessons. The story was far from forgotten. Today, whiskey flows freely again, but the US-Canada relationship is changed. Trust has been shaken, caution lingers. Canadians emerged more confident, proud of their culture and products. The whiskey industry now stands tall on the world stage. #Sip Canadian left a lasting legacy of consumer power. The US learned the cost of arrogance and the value of respect. Canada is no junior partner, it's an equal. The whiskey war forced both nations to rethink their friendship. It was about more than whiskey. It was about identity and respect. A careless joke nearly unraveled a century of goodwill, but it also revealed the strength of a nation's spirit. Friendships require effort, empathy, and respect. Sometimes it takes a fight over whiskey to remember that.